Hi everybody, it's Mr. Gray here. Thank you again for another great week. We survived the deluge of rain, it was really exciting here in class. I think because we haven't gotten rain like that in a long time, the kids were just so amped up and excited to see it and hear it on the roof, so that was pretty fun. I also want to give a big shout out to all the students for performing in the winter concert. It was so fun to go see winds and strings and vocal and watch them perform. I know they worked really hard on that. I have several announcements. The first one is there is no school on Monday, the 16th. It is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the holiday for Martin Luther King Jr. We'll be talking a little bit about Martin Luther King Jr. On Friday, the 13th, before, so that's a great conversation to have with your students about what they learned, about anything that you know about him, and what was going on in the 60s. That's one thing. Another thing is Colonial Day is coming up. So Colonial Day is going to be a day we spend focusing on more on like the art projects that we can do, but we're going to talk about colonial life in a more hands-on way. So the kids that day at school will be focusing on different projects pretty much for the whole day. So I need some help organizing that. I sent out a link with a Google form that you could put whether or not you want to be a volunteer or if you might be able to donate materials. Once I get the responses back from that, I'll send out more information about what volunteering looks like and what donating looks like in terms of supplies. There's no dress up that day, but the kids will be doing stuff all day long. So that'll be really fun. The only other announcement I have is that pretty far in the future, March 9th is going to be a girls' talk night, and you can check the link for that, but PTA puts that on just for the girls come, and they talk about growing up and hanging out with friends, and there's a presentation, I think there's food, I think it's really fun, but if you have any questions about that, you can ask me, but that's something that's coming up pretty soon, March 9th. The only other thing I would tell you is kids are working hard on a little extra activity. They're making board games. If you hear about any difficulty with partners, I'm happy to help out with that. Don't feel like the kids should be spending hours at home or have to be working back and forth with partners. We're trying to make plans in class so that it's pretty clear what kids can do on their own time. So just let me know if you have any issues with that, but that's what's going on. In Reader's Workshop, we're continuing our unit called Argument and Advocacy. This is all based on informational texts and specifically articles and videos, some other multimedia. And we're looking at specific questions, and then we're trying to collect all the evidence we can, and then we're going to end up having a debate. So this week the kids got their introduction. They're going to be debating on whether or not people should be allowed to climb Mount Everest. And so we started off having a discussion about that and kind of looking at some introductory articles and building up background knowledge. And now the kids with partners have these big ideas of what might be discussed in a debate, from danger to trash to the treatment of Sherpas. And so now that we put those together, the kids are going to start collecting evidence and planning for their debate. This is going to go on for a few weeks. This is our first debate, and it's going to be small. It's going to be a partnership versus another partnership. And so next week what's going to happen is the kids will continue to collect evidence. They'll rank that evidence. So now we've looked at the main ideas, like what evidence support those ideas, and then what is the best evidence of the evidence that they found. The kids will make a debate where they have to have an opening statement. They'll have to respond back and forth, from one group to the other. It'll just be two people talking to two people. And the kids will rotate later in the week when they actually debate between a few different groups. They'll have multiple opportunities, and they will end up having to argue both sides at different times. So, we're trying to look at a debate from all sides. The other thing that we'll do during the week is we'll watch a couple of groups do a debate, and we'll really talk about that. And so, in the week, the kids will reflect on what they did in their debate, and they'll have a little paper where they kind of score themselves and score how the debate went. And that's kind of our intro into debating and studying these informational texts. And then we'll continue expanding on that in the weeks to come by finding more topics to talk about, and also kind of expanding the debate from 2 versus 2 to like maybe 4 versus 4, and then maybe a little bit larger of a group if we get to it, to kind of practice how debate goes, waiting our turn, responding to someone, using our evidence and preparation, and all those things to make for a great debate and also to learn more about a topic. In Writer's Workshop, we're working on an argument a research-based argument essay. And so we're starting off with a specific topic, which is, should chocolate milk be in schools? You can see that reading and writing kind of go hand in hand. We're taking these topics and mining for evidence and then ranking that evidence. We did that this week in writing. The kids found a bunch of evidence from articles that I had curated, and then they ranked that evidence. They worked with their writing partner to find what was the best evidence that I can use. At the end of this current week and in the beginning of the week coming up, we have a couple of focuses based on earlier writing that the kids have done that I really would like to see to raise the level of their writing. The first is using structure to help make your point. So we really talked about that and practiced a little bit, and we'll do that into next week about how can I structure my essay, not simply as a 5-paragraph essay, but to think of what the different sections are. So we're definitely going to be trying to move away from this idea of a 5-paragraph essay. That's a great simple structure to use, but now we're trying to expand. So I'll probably have several sections, but there could be multiple paragraphs in that section depending on how I organize my evidence. So the kids will be writing an essay on, should chocolate milk be banned from schools? And so we've had a lot of discussion and debate about that after looking at the articles. I can tell you the kids originally were thinking one thing, and their point of view has changed a little bit, which is a really cool thing to watch as they learn more information. Not totally, but a little bit. So we're going to focus on structure, and the second thing we're going to focus on is connection. So the kids are so good at finding evidence and stacking up that evidence and even ranking the evidence to figure out what's the best. But now I need to use that evidence to support my point. So a big thing we're going to be working on are phrases like consequently, or this shows that. I took a quote and then I'm explaining exactly how that evidence supports my overall point and making it really clear to everyone. So that's what we're going to focus on for a couple days before they publish their first research-based argument essay. And then we'll move on by the next week to a new topic. In math, our unit is called Whole Number Expressions and Operations. We did a quick review the last week for some different strategies for multiplying and dividing, and talked about the reasonableness of answers and trying to be very precise, and some different strategies you can use to break apart numbers to make sure the multiplication and division are a little bit easier. Might be a way to help check your answers if you're stuck, if the numbers are too big, or things like that. So we're moving on from that. After we did a little quiz, we're going to talk about order of operations, PEMDAS, if you remember. We'll discuss that a little bit. I know the kids have some thoughts about that, and we'll talk about some of the strengths of that and what trouble we might run into if we see that. And then finally, we'll look at some error analysis. We'll look at where people have made errors using order of operations before. In social studies, we are on the road to revolution. So we're now moving into the 1740s, 1750s, 1760s, and we're starting to run into this idea of America. So through a few things that were happening in the 1730s and 1740s, between the First Great Awakening and as the colonies kind of changed a little bit, we have this idea coming down the pipe, basically, getting started, that Americans in the colonies are less interested in very top-down hierarchical structures for government. We don't want to listen to this one person at the top. And so they start to kind of get this idea that we have these American ideas. We want to govern ourselves and make our own rules, and we don't like this idea of a king. So we're watching that change take place. And we're going to try to look at that based on this idea of a town meeting or a town hall. And so we're going to conduct a town hall next week. We're going to prep for one and talk about what it might include, who's going to be in charge, what's the agenda. And then on Friday next week, we're actually going to have a town hall. And we'll be looking at some issues in the school and issues in class, and we'll kind of discuss how town halls worked and why they were the very beginnings of representative government as we know it in the Americas. For science, the students will be looking at the relationship between organisms and the ecosystem. We'll be doing a little bit of work with that, and of course, they'll have science lab with Mrs. DeMarco. Finally, in vocabulary, we're going to take a test on Tuesday, which is our first classical roots quiz. So we did 2 lessons of roots. We talked about different roots that lead to current English words. So the students need to know the roots, the definitions of the roots, the words, the definitions of the words, so they can be successful on the quiz on Tuesday. We will have reviewed a little bit and have gone over that, so the kids will know what to look over before their quiz. Then we'll move on. So we're going to be jumping back and forth between, we'll do 2 lessons of classical roots and then 2 lessons of wordly wise. So next week we're going to do the first lesson of wordly wise. That will go for 2 weeks. And then we'll have a quiz on wordly wise, and then we'll take a little break and we'll go back to classical roots. So that's what's happening, all the announcements and academics. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email me. And as always, have a good week. Bye.